The preseason AP Top 25 is out, and the Iowa Hawkeyes aren't just outside the top 25, they're way outside. Not 26th, not 30th, try 44th. Yep, we're in the same neighborhood as schools you need Google Maps to find on a Saturday.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. I've been covering the Hawkeyes for over 20 years on the radio here in the state of Iowa. You can hear me currently on the Iowa Sports Radio Network. We have stations in Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, the Quad Cities, Sioux City, and our flagship 106.3 KXNO in Des Moines, talking the world of sports and lots of Hawkeyes with you each day from noon until 2. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Today, Duke Slater Field. Though the field will not be renamed, the emblem on the field will be changed. They are moving the emblem away. What does that mean for Iowa and the financial situation that the Hawkeyes face going forward? We'll also be joined by Elliot Clough, his firsthand account of what he saw at Kinnick Stadium on Saturday with the open practice and Kids Day as we continue to react to what we saw. But early on Monday afternoon, a late morning, I guess it was here, Central Time, it was released, the AP Top 25 for 2025. Now, the AP poll is not very high in terms of importance like it once was. It does not dictate anything as it pertains to postseason, where teams are, where they rank, and where they're going to eventually go, both with the college football playoff and bowl games. Not the case like it once was. However, I think we saw quite a surprise here in this one. Now, I did not anticipate that Iowa was going to be in the top 25. The coaches poll came out a week ago. A lot of times that does mirror what you're going to see from the Associated Press poll. But as I went through and looked at some of the other teams that were listed and looked at teams that were looked at towards the bottom of the list, and of course, who we'll see in week 2, Iowa State, they come in at number 22. Iowa State, they lose a ton out of that wide receiver group with Jalen Noel moving on. And, you look at a year ago, well, without those wide receivers, they certainly don't win that game in Kinnick Stadium. You got Boise State ranked in there, Tennessee, but it was the next tier of teams. Like I said, I didn't think Iowa was going to be in the top 25, but then you look at some of the teams that are in front of them, starting with the 2016 BYU, who's still trying to figure out who their quarterback is going to be as Jake Retzloff is off to Tulane. Speaking of Tulane is ranked ahead of Iowa. Yes, the Green Wave with Retzloff and former Hawkeye quarterback Brendan Sullivan. Now, you could argue that Tulane is a team you believe is going to be the Group of 5 representative that's going to get a bid into the college football playoff, and that's a reason to put them in front. How about this, though? Nebraska. Yeah, the Huskers received 23 votes in the preseason poll, where Iowa, they get 5. And they get 5 with the likes of Liberty, Navy, behind Duke, Florida State, who went 2-10 last year, James Madison, Auburn, who was brutal last year. And I know it's not just about last season, right? It's more than that. But I think it also makes us realize that our expectations are a little bit different here and what the expectations are for this team. You look at the losses defensively, you can understand from an outsider perspective why they don't believe. And when they hear about Mark Gronowski, it is, we got to see it. We have to see it to believe it. Iowa snub from the top 25. I don't think snub is the right word, but how far down the list? That was a surprise, certainly to me. Last night, we got to hear from the crew with the Big Ten Network as BTN was in town on Monday for Iowa City and their trip around the 18 conference teams. A look at the Hawkeyes. Great to hear from Tim Lester and Phil Parker and, of course, Kirk Ferentz, a couple of the players also. A couple of big takeaways, though, overall. Continued now for the third consecutive availability, if you will, with Iowa Media Day Friday, kids practice on Saturday, and then BTN Day yesterday, as Nathan McNeil just continues to come up. And I don't think it is something where it is some kind of demerit on other young guys in the room with Xavier Williams, with Brevin Dahl. It's not some kind of knock, but there is something different with him. You go back and you watch Kids Day on Saturday. and just how fluid and the understanding and the patience that he has. It's a guy you can tell has played a lot of football. And you couple that with what he's already done in the weight room and turning heads there. It is incredibly interesting that he comes up. Now, you could tell from Dave Refson, the host of the program, that he's all in, as Kirk Ferentz is all in, as Tim Lester's all in on Mark Gronowski. And I think the exciting part about Mark Gronowski is this is a guy that wasn't able to go through spring. His understanding, the building blocks that are going to be there. This is a guy that's played a ton of football and seen a ton of things. And yes, though it is a step up in competition, this is a guy that has seen so much on the football field that I don't think there's going to be a lot that's going to surprise him out there. And as he continues to build his understanding of this offense, he continues to building that repertoire with the wide receiver group and with the tight ends. And speaking of tight end, look, I could be all over the place, and I feel like I am when it comes to the tight end position, because we go from on Saturday not seeing a whole lot out of the tight end position. It was also a practice where it felt like they were working on even more in the passing game, that was kind of a big sticking point, something that they were really looking to work for and work on in front of the people in attendance there. And we didn't see much out of the tight ends. And it led to my speculation. This is the Packers offense. It is the Shanahan offense through Matt LaFleur that now Tim Lester is kind of taking with him. And when you go back and you think of the tight end position, at least recently under LaFleur in Green Bay, it's not a huge part of the offense. But then we hear about Estrenga and what he was able to do. And we know Zach Ortworth, with the speed that he has, what he can be in the passing game and how many times he's got down the field in just the few receptions that he's had in his career. The depth, the young guys at that tight end position, and maybe I have shortchanged what the tight end position can be this season for Iowa football. So that was another one of my main takeaways. Good to see Jalen Watson back out there practicing. Need him and building that depth at the cornerback spot, as that's something that definitely is going to be a big, big part. This is a fun time. I love this time of year because it is about the speculation. It is about the guesswork. It's about trying to figure out and taking just those little tiny nuggets that we get and seeing if we can create what is a realistic possibility. I was doing a podcast earlier today with an outfit out of Wisconsin, and they were just talking about Iowa and the expectations. And I mentioned maybe the floor is a little bit lower this year, but I keep coming back to the upside. You know, what if Iowa has won double-digit games with some awful quarterback play realistically over the last couple of seasons? And what if this does really work? You know, can we dream a little bit? Maybe something we need to tackle here in the coming days. Is the upside even higher for this team? The floor, like I said, I think it is lower. But the upside, am I selling this team short? Sometimes I wonder about that. We continue Locked On Hawkeyes, and we're going to take a look back, more insight on what we saw on Saturday at kids practice. We'll bring in some different eyes. Elliot Clough was there for HawkeyeInsider.com, part of 24/7 Sports. We'll get the insight of Elliot of what he saw at Kids Day as we continue on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. We've all been there, logging on early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime. You can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. I love seeing what the price is going to be and actually paying that price. With Game Time, the price you see is a price you pay. No hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and make sure you use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Let's talk some Hawkeyes and what we saw over the weekend in Iowa City. It was Friday, Iowa Football Media Day. Saturday, the Open Kids Day practice. And then today, we'll get well, basically our last glimpse at anything, as it'll be Big Ten Network Day as they've been to practice earlier today, and we'll get some reports from that. And of course, the show coming up later this evening. Here to talk it all, it is Elliot Clough from 24/7 Sports, HawkeyeInsider.com. Elliot, as always, appreciate the time. How are you?
I'm good, Trent. How are you doing?
Doing well. So, kind of hard to navigate because we have so much and we just get this onslaught of information. And then we have to wait for basically 3 weeks before we actually see this football team in there. Let's put it this way. Your top takeaway, and I know there's a lot, but if you had to point and you were told your editor over there at Hawkeye Insider said, you got to write on one topic, what was the most important thing you saw on Saturday at Kids Day?
I would probably have to say it's about the explosive plays and the fact that Iowa can actually pass the ball downfield now. With Mark Gronowski under center, obviously still working things out, still getting some chemistry things down, still missing some throws. Had some errant snaps from Logan Jones over those few hours that we were able to watch the team. But to me, I don't want to crown Mark Gronowski before he does anything at Iowa, because I think way too many people did that with Cade, and obviously we saw what happened. But Mark was good, and I think it's cause for optimism right now with Iowa. If they can actually pass the ball and complete some of those big plays, man, things are different for the Hawkeyes, especially based on what we've seen the last half decade.
Mark Gronowski, really good early on, made some mistakes. There was a fumbled snap. There was a shotgun snap that he bobbled. And, of course, the pick six. Ups, downs, highs, lows, your takeaway from Gronowski and what you saw.
Yeah, I would say it's probably the main thing that I would take away is the big plays and the completions to Reese Sanders and Seth Anderson. But ultimately, I do think what it comes down to is that first thing I said is chemistry. I mean, that's the main thing that they're still working on. They've only really been doing full-on football for about a week now, so I think expecting that chemistry to be fully done and taken care of is kind of unrealistic. But at the same time, I think it's cautious optimism right now, given what he was able to do. So it's a mix of, I don't know yet, especially considering the context of, like I said, the offense for the last few years. But at the same time, like I said, there is reason for cautious optimism, especially with the ability to hit some of those downfield passes. Just because, we've seen it in bits and pieces over the last few years. It'll happen from time to time, but Mark trusts his guys, and he's going to give them an opportunity. That includes a 30-yard pass, a 40-yard pass, then that's huge. And that's really, really something that this last year's team lacked in the passing game. Like, yeah, Caleb Johnson was explosive plays, but he was like the only source of explosive plays for last season's offense. So if they can complete some of those long downfield throws, that's going to help them out and make them a lot more efficient.
We know Reese Vanderzee, big play potential that he has. Jacob Gill, solid, dependable. He's going to be good. Seth Anderson looked the part, and we always say if healthy with him. Where does Sam Phillips, the transfer from Chattanooga, where does he fit into this equation when you're talking about some of those more veteran wide receivers?
Yeah, we didn't really see a ton of him on Saturday either. There was an end around, and he might have caught like a pass or two. But other than that, he wasn't super involved. I do still expect him to be one of those top four guys in the receiving corps is on the field that amount on Saturday, right? So I think he factors in some of those end around jet sweep sort of situations, but he's also kind of that possession receiver like Jacob Gill. That's what it strikes me as. Then again, we haven't really seen a ton of him. So I think that's still kind of TBD. But right now, I would expect him to be in that sort of top guys that play quite a bit this year and play in a variety of roles in the Iowa offense.
Trevor Lauck got most of the reps at one. Now I know him and Dotzler have been rotating, a little bit of Bryce George in there also, the Ferris State transfer. I know a lot of people are pointing to the pick six, that it was his fault. Look, the screen game was terrible all Saturday long, so I don't think anything there. He's going to have those moments, but I thought overall I was impressed by Trevor Lauck. What did you think of the left tackle?
That is something that you have to point to because it was an 80-yard pick six or what would have been an 80-yard pick six. So you can't just ignore it. At the same time, something that I was talking to a few people this morning, and the way I thought about it is like, to me, Mark doesn't make that throw in a game, right?
Yeah.
It was an open practice. I think it was a scenario where Mark probably saw what was going on, but it was like, screw it, try to make the throw instead of throwing it away. To me, Mark is a lot smarter than that play. And in a game, he would have thrown that ball away. Two, with Trevor Lauck, I think he's got the edge right now. Of course, there's a lot, like I said, a lot more football to be played. Like you said, 3 weeks left. So there's still a lot to figure out there. I thought Jack Dotzler was good with the Sioux. To me, I don't necessarily think Bryce George is going to be that starting left tackle anytime soon. He did get the 2 reps at left guard behind Leighton Jones. Told me he's been getting those reps during media day. So to me, it is kind of a 2-man race right now. We might hear otherwise. And if George, ascends big time and ends up taking that left tackle spot, like, I'll eat my words. That's fine. But to me, it's Lauck's job. I think he was good for the most part. When you're matching up against Max Llewellyn and some of those other guys that are on the edge, that's just going to be tough for literally any left tackle in college football.
Yeah.
So I do think Trevor performed pretty well, and I do think it's his job to lose right now. I wouldn't say he's completely locked it up, but if Jack Dotzler starts to elevate or Bryce George really takes a big jump forward, they definitely could compete. But to me, if I had to guess right now, I think it's Trevor Lauck's job.
So from Lauck over to the guys he was going up against, you mentioned some of those guys on that defensive front. Boy, they are deep. They got to be able to get to the quarterback, because I said this earlier, Elliot, I want to get your perspective on this. If I was going to get back to an elite level defense overall, because of the questions that we have, certainly depth-wise at linebacker, the questions at cornerback, and with TJ Hall being that, I think this defensive line has to be at an elite level, and it has to be not just Llewellyn and Herkett, but also a Brian Allen or a Yosei Epinesa or Joseph Anderson. They got to get guys that can get to the quarterback, and the middle's got to be stout too. This defensive line, it feels like they have the pieces. You think they can put it all together and be elite this year?
Yeah, I think that's one of the main questions right now with the defense. Obviously, you mentioned the linebackers, secondary. To me, I would say the number one question right now, especially off of Kids Day, is TJ Hall going to be an elite corner? Because I was so used to having that. They had it for, a decent chunk of last year in Jamari Harris. But after that, we saw what happened against the likes of, Missouri. It's one of those teams that could pass the ball with Brady Cook under center. So to me, if they don't have that, then it's so much pressure is going to be on that defensive line to create pressure, to create disruption. Whether or not they're going to be elite, I'd love to tell you yes and have all the Iowa fans loving me in my mentions on Twitter, but it's another TBD right now. There's so little we still really truly know about this team. I think they have the capability to get up there and be among one of the best defensive lines in the country. I think they have the capability to be, I think it was, forgive me, somebody's going to come on air and make me sound stupid. I think it was 2021, if I'm remembering right, maybe 22. All 3 of their leaders in sacks, it was Lucas Van Ness, Deontay Craig, and I think it was 22, and Joe Evans. They each had 6.5, and I think the team as a whole had 35 sacks. Mm-hmm. Like, they have an opportunity to be that kind of defensive line, because like you went down the line, right? You've got Ethan Herkett, who led the team in sacks with 6.5 last year. I think it was 6.5, if I'm remembering correctly. Then it's Max Llewellyn, Brian Allen, Bryce Hawthorne, Aaron Graves. Like, you can just name guys going up and down the line. And if there's an opportunity to really stack up sacks, we might not see a star emerge, right? They might just be good across the board. I definitely think that's a possibility with this group.
Karson Sharar, I hate to be hyperbolic. He reminded me a little bit of Chad Greenway. And I threw that out, and then I feel stupid even saying it out loud because, it's Karson Sharar. And as we've talked about for the last 5 years, he's never healthy, but boy, sideline to sideline, physicality, the speed, the power combination. You can see why, Elliot, we've been hearing about this guy for 5 years. I
think so. To tell you the truth, when leaving Saturday, I kind of left thinking meh about the linebackers as a whole. I had to go back and watch. I think so much of us are so focused on the offense and their ability to produce, we completely disregard the defense. Like, I'm guilty of that 100%, unless, there's a big play like Cohen Enfinger made. But going back and watching, I don't know if I'd say Chad Greenway.
I know, it's high praise.
But I did continually, like, he was just around the ball, right? Like, almost every snap. And they're going to need that. Like, if there is any lock in that starting trio of linebackers, to me, it's Karson Sharar at this point in time. You mentioned his ability to stay healthy. That is so incredibly key with him. But if he can stay healthy, stay on the field, we might be seeing another Nick Jackson type where he plays Nick obviously played 2 years, but plays his 1 year and really, really plays super well, wins Big Ten honors, and maybe ends up on an NFL roster. Like, that's the potential we're looking at with the Karson Sharar. And to me, I think the number one takeaway is something I already said, is that he was just around the ball at all times, especially in the run game. He had that pick six, I think, not this spring, but the spring prior. It might have been Kids Day, actually. But he's been good. He's been good. And I think if there is any, real hope in that linebacker group, it's substantiated with Karson Sharar right now.
Couple more with Elliot Clough as we're talking Hawkeyes and what we saw over in Iowa City on Saturday at Kids Day. Defensive backfield. I mentioned I was going to start with you here, and then I didn't. So let's get into it. TJ Hall, we talked about it a little bit. TJ Hall out. I guess maybe the surprise for me is also with Watson dealing with an injury, soft tissue injury, is Alex Moda was up there, Godfrey running with the ones. And I anticipated that we were going to see a little bit more of the transfer from South Dakota, that we were going to see more Barrows out there. That wasn't the case. Give me your takeaway over at the specifically cornerback.
I keep telling people who bring up takeaways to me that I didn't notice that I need to go back and watch the film. But with Shaheed Barrows, that is one thing I noticed too. And I might go back and double check again, just based on what we got, what Sean and I got. But the only play that I distinctly remember from Shaheed is him getting beat on that Reese Vandersee touchdown early on in the day. That's the only one that sticks out to me. I don't know if maybe he twisted an ankle and just was out. I'm just not sure. We weren't told anything. I'm going to need to double check on that. But didn't really see a whole lot of him. Jalen Watson played a little bit more than I thought he would. He wasn't, super present on the defensive side of the field, but he did get some snaps and he did play full speed on a few reps. But yeah, Deshaun Lee didn't necessarily stick out to me either. The note for me was that Rashad Godfrey played quite a bit. And Desmond King actually spent some time with him prior to the game and was working on stuff. So that was interesting. But man, we talk about question marks, and corner really is a huge one for me right now, especially if TJ Hall, let TJ Hall sit against Albany. Like, if he plays, let him play the first half and get his feet under him, get used to being back on the field, but let him sit for the second half and let him get back for Iowa State, because there just is not, based on what we saw this last Saturday, there just is not that elite number one corner that Iowa is so used to having. And I would feel a lot more comfortable right now. I don't know if you remember this, Trent. They had that corner from Miami, Ohio that they were looking at trying to bring on campus, and he had scheduled a visit. And then he commits to Auburn before he even steps on campus at Iowa. I'm assuming Auburn dropped a bag to go and get that guy, which I don't blame you. He had a ton of picks, ton of PBUs at Miami of Ohio. And if Iowa had that guy, if they were able to get that guy out of the portal, I would feel a lot more comfortable than I currently do with the cornerback room. So if TJ Hall comes out and is a lockdown corner in those first few weeks, I'll feel a lot better. But for right now, it's one side of the ball is going to get criticized one way or another, right? Like, if Mark Gronowski couldn't complete a pass on Saturday, everybody would be like, oh, the defense is great, but offense is still terrible. But Mark completed some of those deep passes, so now the defensive backs are awful. Like, there's just no winning really out of these things. And for the corners, they were unfortunately the losers out of this thing. And not that, there is a winner or a loser out of a fall practice like that. But to me, the corners are, it's just if there is one word or two words to keep referencing here, it's question mark. And that's what the corners are right now for me.
No doubt about it. Elliot Clough joining us 24/7 Sports. Hey, Elliot, out of time for today. Appreciate it. As always, we'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Trent.
Elliot Clough, 24/7 Sports, joining us as we take a look at open practice and Kids Day from over the weekend. Thanks as always to Elliot for his time. One more for you. We continue Locked On Hawkeyes, and Duke Slater Field is going to look different inside of Kinnick Stadium. We explain as we continue on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Trent Condon back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. As always, thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We are with you each and every day talking the world of Hawkeye athletics, football, basketball, and whatever else pops up. You can find us on YouTube. Hit subscribe if you're watching over there, or on the podcast side, 5-star reviews. And thank you to everydayers with us each and every day. Duke Slater Field. Well, it's not going away, but it's going to be different. So before the season, 4 years ago, they put to paint, notating that it was Duke Slater Field at Kinnick Stadium. And it was great. I mean, the recognition of a guy that went through a lot, the tumult, a Iowa guy that helped beat Newt Rockne, helped beat Notre Dame, played in the NFL, went to law school, and did it in the 1920s, late teens into the 20s, at a time that there were not a whole lot of African-American students. He was the first black student athlete in school history to earn All-American honors, 3-time All Big Ten honors. But the reason that they're moving this emblem away from the 25-yard line is because the NCAA has approved universities being able to put, yes, you know what's coming, a logo there of a corporation. And that's what's going to happen. Now, it's slimy. It's gross. After getting these good vibes the last 4 years of having Duke Slater's name on the field, that'll be the case no more, at least on the playing surface. So they're going to move it, and it'll still be somewhere on the surface. But this is our new reality. And I can sit here and I can whine and complain and get on my soapbox about the continued deterioration of the NCAA, but it's going to do no good. This is our new reality. And for each and every one of you that is sitting here listening, watching about the Hawkeyes, you love it. And you love being a Hawkeye. And you love everything that it represents. And even as college athletics change and evolve, and most people believe for the worse, it's not going to change your affinity for the Hawkeyes. It's not going to change your love. And so you put up a logo there, and we got a KC logo at the 25. So be it. More money coming in. And in the end, the answer to all your questions is money. And that's where we are with another one of these conversations. That'll do it for today. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Your team every day. That's what we do here on the Locked On Network. And a big thank you to each and every one of you for being with us here today. Hit subscribe again if you're watching us on YouTube, trying to get up to 5,000 subscribers before we get to football season, or a 5-star review on the podcast side. All of it helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Until then, go Hawks.